Hi, today I get to be with, once again, one of my favorite people, Marbeth Skwarczynski. I have to be very careful with that last name, Skwarczynski. Marbeth, welcome to Between the Lines. It's a pleasure to have you here again.
I'm so glad to be talking to you again.
We have fun together. We have
We
fun
do.
together. We do. Marbeth has this incredible new book out, and I don't know if you have a cover of it with you. I'm going to hold it up anyway. Yeah, there we go. She blessed me. Hers is better because mine is, a mirror image. Hers is the original. She blessed me with a copy of this book, and it's called Princess of Moab, a novel of Ruth, and it is a prequel. Is that
Yes.
correct? True. It's like everything leading up to. The Book of Ruth is one of my favorite books, and I'm sure, obviously, since you wrote about it, it's probably one of yours as well. And my
Yes.
mom's name was Ruth, so it always makes me feel good to even say it. So, Marbeth, we have a lot of questions about this, but let's just step in first and just talk about what's been going on in your life, other than obviously working on this book. How are things going with you?
Last year was really hard,
Yeah.
bad year. Yeah, I can honestly say it was a really tough
Oh,
year.
I'm
The
sorry.
only good thing was this, and um, my husband and I joined households with my sister and her husband, so that was also a really good move for
Oh,
us.
good.
Unfortunately, he passed away not too long after we moved in,
I'm
so
so
it's been a
sorry.
hard year.
Yeah.
And that summer, my mother passed away. So it was a bad year.
I
This year, however, has gotten a lot better. So I'm very thankful for that. God has blessed us all along. And now we're very close to my sister. We're here to help her. She helps us, and we just have this great relationship. And she's my biggest cheerleader when it comes to publishing and my books. And so I really appreciate her.
I'm blessed with, I have actually three sisters.
Oh, nice.
I'm very blessed. And we have, it's when our mom passed away, it seems like the glue that holds a family together, you tend to drift away. And then we moved out of California and now we're in Tennessee and we've been here for a while. So we did a girls' sisters trip for the first time since I think we were kids, just
Oh,
last in September, and it was incredible to have that reconnection. But sisters are special. Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm happy that you have one that you're very close. What is your sister's name?
Esther.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow. How
And
funny.
my oldest sister's name is Ruth. However, she changed her name she goes by her middle name, Diana. So I
Okay.
have a hard time. Sometimes I'll be talking about this Ruth and I'll accidentally say Diana. And I'm like, wait. No, no, different person.
It's ingrained in your brain.
Ingrained in my brain.
So did your parents purposely name them after biblical characters?
Yes, they did.
Okay. So Marbeth comes from.
From somebody they went to college with.
I was gonna say, I was gonna say, am I not that proficient in the Bible? Because I don't remember, but then you have Dorcas, who is,
Thank
Dorcas.
God they didn't name me Dorcas.
I know.
I know. I mean, God bless Dorcases out there, but that's a rough name. I mean, seriously. Tabitha is,
Well, that's the thing. I have a sweet older friend of mine. Her middle name is Dorcas, and I said, couldn't they have just done Tabitha? I mean, it's the same, same
same
person.
person.
Names are important. Names are
Yeah.
important, into
My
books.
name is my name is actually Margaret Elizabeth. So I've
Oh,
got the Elizabeth part from the Bible.
oh, Margaret Elizabeth. So did you change it to Marbeth, or was that a nickname growing up?
That was my name from the time I was born. I was legally Margaret Elizabeth, but my parents called me Marbeth from right from birth.
Wow. Okay. How sweet is that? It's
Yeah.
nice because you could, if you look at your name too quickly, you see Mary Beth, or you can mess that up pretty fast. So
I
Marbeth.
did that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Marbeth, let's talk a little bit about this book. I love your cover, by the
Thank
way.
you. I didn't do it, but I love the cover. It's my
You,
my cover artist was very talented, obviously.
yes, you approved it, I'm sure. So good for
Yeah.
you. Yeah. So tell us a little bit. I know you started this book more than 20 years ago.
You did.
So, wow. And you have, it's been a journey for you. So, let us hear a little bit about that journey.
Um, well, the first time I even thought about doing this kind of story was just a couple throwaway lines in sermons about Ruth, and can you imagine David seeing a shoe on his mantle? And, that was the family history, because Ruth, the story of the shoe.
Right.
Then can you imagine being Ruth and trying to travel with Naomi when she wouldn't even talk to her? Just little throwaway things that I thought that would be a really good story, but I didn't do anything with it at first. And then when my kids were a little older, I went back to college. I kind of dropped out. I wasn't ready the first time I went. I went back to college and I was taking literature classes and art classes and everything. And the way everything just kind of morphs together into storytelling.
Mhm.
And I started, on those long drives to school, telling myself this story about Ruth, what it would have been like for David to hear the history of his grandmother, his great grandmother. And I never put that in this version of the book. It was in the original where he, sits down and talks to his Abba Obed about that. But I grew up with Bible first, and then as a little kid, fairy tales.
Mhm.
And then as a much older kid, more fairy tales because you just don't outgrow them. They grow with you.
Mhm.
And then mythology. And then when I went to college, it was literature, which encompasses fairy tales, Bible, mythology. It's all there, it's all wrapped up in one big bow. And so I put a lot of that into this book because I wanted to show Ruth where she would have been at her time. So I loved ancient history, love ancient art, and I kind of peppered the whole book with these little literary Easter eggs, So the very first the prologue, we have a Cinderella moment, and
Mhm.
that's for the reader. It's not for the characters. They have no clue. It's not they're not in they didn't have a Cinderella to refer to.
Right.
Way
Right.
too long. But the care of one person putting a shoe on another person who has gone through some kind of trauma, who is catatonic, and just being cared for by this faceless person that they wouldn't be able to pick out of a lineup. I
Right.
really made her the prince and the princess all at the same time, where she doesn't know who this person is, but she's being cared for at a time when she needs to be cared for. But I've also added things like Princess and the Pea is in here, the ancient sport of bull jumping from Crete, a little bit of the Odyssey, a little bit of Pyramus and Thisbe, a little bit, I just
So
kind
we're talking fiction here.
oh, it's big time fiction, but it's a lot of fun,
Yeah. Well, it's
And
amazing to me to be able to even think in that time frame. It's not like you can pull up information that's been written aside from the Bible, of course, which is important, but there are not a huge number of descriptors in the Bible that give us a clear picture of what it was really like back then.
right, we really don't know. That's where the art history classes came in very well, because I could look at what was in the Middle East, just in a general sense, how was worship being performed? And we get a lot of that from the Bible. What kind of artwork we were looking at, and what was the purpose of the artwork in the Middle East? I mean, I started teaching literature, and so every year I was reading Epic of Gilgamesh. It's in the book. I was reading Epic of Gilgamesh. I was teaching art history, so I got a chance to really kind of include all of these wonderful little allusions to the culture of the day.
Isn't it incredible when you think about, I mean, I think about this because I just read this devotional this morning that talked about how before we're even born, the Lord puts on our hearts and in our DNA or our genetics, whatever you want to call it, special giftings, special things that we love. Like I'm not a big art history person. I can't stand to go to museums. I'm just going to be honest about that. But that wasn't put into my heart. But God placed these things in your heart and put the desire for you to do art history and to learn all this, have a love for this, maybe for the sole purpose of creating this book. I mean, when you think about that, it's his plan in motion.
Yeah.
It
I
just
like
blows my mind when I think about, but it said, in this thing, it said some of us have these put in our hearts and we don't always follow it. We get sidetracked, we make choices of our own, we blow it to some extent. Or maybe, for me, I didn't grow up in a church that really pushed and taught a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. It has been a hard fought thing for me for the last 20 some odd years
it.
to really grow in that because I grew up in a religion where God was big and scary and my works were important and and I was all about performance. And so that's to this day a struggle for me.
That is so funny because that's exactly how I describe my former church.
There you go.
Yeah,
See?
yeah, I was raised in a very performative, religious, um, toxic situation. And a lot of what I learned about the Bible, the deeper stuff, it really, we were kind of set off on our own. You just learn that on your own. You read the Bible for yourself.
Right.
It seemed like every time all of the biblical growth was had to be measurable, so it was like, okay, we're gonna read the Bible through in 1 year, but then it was like, how many people are going to commit to reading the Bible throughout the course of a year? It's like,
Missing
why
it.
do we have to sign up for that? Why do we have to raise our hands for that? Why can't we just read the Bible because that's God's message to
Right.
us?
And I have, because I've gone through where I've read the Bible very slowly in my own timing. And then I did do the plan. I've done it several times where it's repetitive, which is good, and that's been good. And I was getting to the point a couple of months ago, well, a month ago or so, I went to Women of Joy. And Women of Joy, for those of you that may not know about it, is a women's conference where we're talking 10,000 women together, praising the Lord, and listening to great speakers and people of faith and worship music. And it's just a beautiful time. It's a weekend of really immersing ourselves in the Lord. And one of the speakers talked about agape love. And yeah, we know agape, unconditional love, right?
Mhm.
But she talked about how we have to be so immersed in that agape love that what comes out of ourselves is fed through the Holy Spirit, not through our own selves. And it's like, I get that in my head. How do I
Mhm.
get that into my heart? And I thought, I want to do a deep dive into the word agape. And it
Mhm.
slowed me down. Not just that, I'm doing a women's Bible study, Abide with Jen Wilkin, and it slows you down verse by verse. And I'm like, instead of rushing, just immerse yourself in the day to day. What is God leading me to study today? And it had me take a step back. And I think there is a time to go through so that you do read the Bible, but there's also where we need to slow it down,
Mhm.
the day to day, and see where God is leading in that moment.
Yes. I'm like you, I've read the Bible through multiple times. I would do it it was a yearly thing for me, but I would do like a little New Testament, a little Old Testament sometimes, and then other times. But yeah, writing really does help you slow down your Bible reading because in Princess of Moab, I would go through a lot of the history of Israel because I have Ruth being taught by Naomi the laws of Israel, and a lot of it's set to music. So she's teaching them the songs of Moses from Deuteronomy, the whole law encompassed in a song. But then she's also teaching them the history of this nation that Ruth and um, Orpah are being married into.
Mhm.
So she gets all this training ahead of time. So she learns all these extra things. What that meant for me as a writer, I had to dig deep into that. I had to go into the history. I had to look at the uncomfortable things and have Naomi explain this. Okay, this is an uncomfortable thing, but this is what we believe, and so this is what we do. But for Ruth in her culture, I have her really sitting on the outside looking in. It's also a very performative culture, but her mother has kept her isolated, away from a lot of the religious practices because she fears for her daughter's safety. Because religion was a big, bad, scary kind of thing, especially for women, not just women, but especially for women who tended to be viewed as sacrificial or,
Right.
you political pawns. And that's exactly what how Ruth is viewing herself. But her mother, who is a working queen, the first wife of the king, she is trying to get something better for her daughter, but Ruth can't see that until she's out of the situation. And that's one of the things I really wanted to bring up because I was in a toxic religious situation for years. Like, it's embarrassing, but it was like 30 years I was in this very toxic kind of situation. And I didn't realize how bad it was until I left.
Mhm.
Once I left, I could see the control.
Like a cult. I mean,
Very
you're
guilty.
brainwashed in a way. And unless you can get away from that, and then God can realign your heart to truth. And that's
Right.
where it is, the truth. And I get frustrated a lot with people. A lot of the discussion, like in the Abide, is God is love. A lot of people like to throw that out. God is love. But God is also a God of justice. And
Mhm.
when we take our sin lightly because God's going to forgive it, if you're watching, if you just get in the mind what Christ had to go through in that crucifixion from start to finish for whatever little piddly sin I think is piddly. All sins are not, no sin is piddly. They're not a scale. They're all sins when you think of what Christ actually had to do and how Jen Wilkin is really good about saying, think about every time you have a wayward thought that is sinful or say something that you shouldn't say or whatever, then Jesus goes to God and says, I'm standing into this, I'm standing into Jennifer's place. I'm her advocate. I died for this sin. Well, it just makes it real, and for people to push that aside and say God is love and sin is fine and God loves all, no, it doesn't matter. We're saved by grace, and if we don't take that seriously, and I'm speaking to the choir here, I am not preaching to anybody out there. I'm preaching to myself. If I don't take that seriously, I am missing the biggest component of our Christian faith that we have.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, but and we that was part of the toxic situation was that there was a major sin issue being covered in our church
Mhm.
and we weren't really supposed to talk about it. We did approach the pastor, we did approach the deacons, we did talk about it, but it just didn't matter.
Right.
It was, somebody had paid their dues and therefore they were okay. And it's like, no, with this kind of crime that this person committed, they shouldn't be around, kids. And we had a school, we had, you know, it's like we just can't do that. And we spent a lot of years just trying to change things from within,
Mhm.
and it was impossible. We just couldn't do it. And now that we're out, things started to change, but that was good. It was good for our family
Right.
and it was good for the church,
Right.
eventually. But yeah, for
Hard.
Ruth in the book, she's stuck in like growing up in a performative religion, and it's not until she leaves that she can see the danger that she was in all this time. Her mother saw it because her mom had been so close, her mom was close to it, but her mom saw the danger.
Right.
Ruth couldn't see it. She's only 17 at the beginning of the book. And I purposely made her a little older because um, I think sometimes we get into this idea that all the women in the Bible were super, super young. And I think that's been used as a weapon against our young girls, where they're being told, well, you can get involved with, well, I don't want to say get involved. You can accept the attentions of someone who's not entirely honest and is kind of creepy because they're older and they're looking out for you and Mary was 14 or 13. It's like
Right.
it doesn't say that anywhere. That was somebody's idea, somebody's thought. They wrote it down. It doesn't mean it's biblical, doesn't mean it's true. I mean, she could have been 25. We don't know how old she
Well,
was.
I think they look at probably the historical context of the time and
Yeah.
how young people were. Because even even the disciples, when you see pictures of the disciples, they're all older men, right? from what I have learned, is they were boys. They didn't have a rabbi. They weren't necessarily that intelligent. They weren't big enough to have a rabbi. So they were off doing the thing. Most of them, aside from Peter, weren't married because they were too young to be married. Peter was probably the oldest, and he still was probably a boy. You know, you think about David was probably, if you start looking at the timeline, he was a child when he faced Goliath. He wasn't in his 20s. He was a younger man. So,
Younger man, but I don't think he was. Uh, you have to remember that he was a soldier before he was anointed.
well, I'm going back to I'm actually some teaching that I learned from a man named Dutch Sheets who talks about that. So it's hard, you know, we can only go by what the Bible says, basically.
Right. Well, he was a soldier in Saul's army first. Then he was anointed to take Saul's place, and then he fought Goliath. So he had a background in the military before he ever fought Goliath. You have, but I think sometimes we just look at the cultural component, but we don't really know a lot of times what the cultural component was because there's not a lot of age
No, they
talked
don't
about.
talk about age. They don't talk about age.
And there's not a lot of age talked about in the contemporary sources around that time either. People just don't talk about it. It's not a thing. There's two women in the Bible whose ages are told. That's it. And one's Sarah and one is Anna, in Jerusalem. So we have no idea how old they are. But my point was, I think we need to step away from you. That needs to stop being an excuse for young girls to act older or be treated as older than what they actually are. Let's keep them kids, keep them children.
As long as possible, absolutely. You know,
Absolutely.
I, they grow up way too fast and they're being exposed to too many things that are not healthy spiritually or physically or emotionally. And we could go off on a huge tangent with that because the culture is and Satan is so prevalent. You know, the spiritual warfare that's going on in this country, in all countries, is just horrendous. And I think a lot of people are not even aware.
No.
They're not even aware, and I think that's the scariest thing. Satan is real. Spiritual warfare is real. So Marbeth, so this book is you had this one published with Elk Lake Publishing. What's next for you? Are you working on another book right now?
I am working on re-releasing my rose collection. I've
Okay.
learned a lot in the last 5 years of self-publishing. So I went back to my first book and decided, you know what, it's time for a fresh cover. And that means time for a rewrite. Let's take a look at the timeline. Let's tighten up the story. Let's make sure the grammar is correct. Because the first time I published it, grammar is not my strong suit. So I went to someone who's was supposed to be very good at grammar. He was a former newspaper editor. And I thought, this is perfect. So I hired this man professionally to edit my book. I'm better at grammar than he is, but I didn't realize it at the time. So it's like, oh, so I'm redoing the books to make sure that they're well done. I don't want to lose writers or readers in book one because I have commas in the wrong places, quotation marks in the wrong places. Let's just take care of that. So it's been rewritten, re-edited. I just finished another edit 2 days ago. And then yesterday I made cookies to just,
Bill,
I gotta get away.
do you have a cover designer?
Yes, my daughter-in-law is a graphic artist.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I'm changing. My original cover was a rose patch.
Remember that.
Yeah. And we went through a bunch of different design ideas to the point where I think she was ready to fire me. And she's like, I can't keep doing all these covers. And I said, you know what? The thing is, I liked the single rose on the cover. I love the idea of the rose collection. So she came up with this beautiful cover. It is a single rose, but it's more artistic and it's very fresh and it looks really good. And I'm very excited about it. But yeah, I'm I'm excited about re-releasing these. I'm starting in January, and then book two will be released in March, and then after that, every month after that, we'll get a new book from the
Nice.
collection until September when a brand new book comes out. Yay!
Yay.
And then another one in November in time
So
for
the
Christmas.
brand new book, is that going to be in the collection?
It is.
Collection, okay. So it's
Uh,
contemporary, right?
Oh, yeah, contemporary
Yeah.
Christian fiction, and it's about recovery after spiritual abuse. So
Okay.
the
Well,
first book
good.
is about betrayal, a youth director betraying his youth group and then just kind of disappearing. And what happens to the youth group that's left behind? You
Mm.
know,
So
they
does that series focus on one of each of those kids that were in the youth group and where that goes, or how did you do the series then?
they all just kind of happen organically. There is one character that I think is in every book, and she's not even a main character from the first book. She finally got her book, her actual book, last year.
Okay.
So that's my most recent, and that's her book. And she moves back to her hometown where she went through a toxic, abusive situation. And her husband are taking over the same church where she was abused
Oh, wow.
and fixing it. They're going back to fix the mistakes of the past. And at the same time, she's bringing her daughter, her daughter's there as well. And she's the same age that her mom was when she went through it. So it's a really interesting take on two voices: the mom who is trying to change the culture of the church, the daughter who is starting traditional school for the first time, and both of them running into bullies everywhere they look.
Doesn't seem to matter how old you are, does it?
It does not. And bullies, some of them change, some of them don't. They just get to be bigger bullies.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm excited to see where you're going with this. And we are meeting again because we're going to talk about the next book coming out in a couple of months. I'm excited about that. But um, I will put all the links in for people to be able to get this book. And I am just thrilled about this for you, Marbeth. And I'm excited that you are been able to delve into something that the Lord had put on your heart 20 years ago, and the fruition of that. This is not a career for people that are impatient. That is for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a slow process sometimes,
You
but
have to have really good imaginary friends and long-term storytelling
that's right.
ability.
And diligence, um,
Yes.
diligence. I would just interviewed Heidi Gray McGill a few days ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
she's
love
amazing.
Heidi. Yeah, and she says this is not for the faint of heart. We have people. She said I had somebody ask me, okay, I want to be a writer. What genre? What should I do? Basically like help me be successful from the get-go. And she's like, you're in the wrong business.
Yeah.
For people that think this is an easy peasy job that we just get to sit down and write, it is. Some days are excruciating just to find the words. So all the power to you. I'm excited about this. I pray God will bless it greatly, and that you will see the fruit of this for years and years to come.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's been nice chatting with you, Marbeth, and I will see you again real soon.
Okay, we'll see
Okay.
you.
Bye.
Bye.